society of today, which is asking the world, begging the world to keep the church doors open. We've missed that for which we're apprehended. Because if we were doing that for which God apprehended, He'd keep the doors open. We've abused the tabernacle plan. Grace and apostleship is power and purpose of God. We get outside of grace and we fail. You get outside of grace in your work, you wither. You get outside of grace trying to do something for God, and you'll fail. You cannot, it said what we just read, we receive grace and apostleship for obedience to the faith. If you try to apply your faith to something outside His grace, your faith will fail. Because He does not provide for your works. 1 John 5:14 said, whatsoever we ask that's in His will, we receive. What we've done is we've so abused the pattern and tried to establish our faith on that which is not His purpose. And God said, I don't provide for yours. I'm not going to pay for what I didn't order. So we must understand all of these have to work together. Now, the journey of Israel demonstrates many things. Two great truths that we've just hit upon. Divine calling and divine provision. You cannot separate divine calling from provision or divine provision from calling. That cloud that came was grace demonstrated. Now that cloud had one destination. That cloud had one purpose. Everything needed to get to that destination and everything needed provision-wise on the journey to that destination is supplied by that cloud. Grace is a force of God that reaches out and takes hold of you and takes you to God's purpose and will provide every need on the way to make that exodus possible. If Israel had tried to set itself free, it would have failed. If they tried to find their own way out, they would have failed. Because grace has but one path. Apply your faith to something outside grace, it will fail. Understanding this, there is only one destination for freedom. There is only one place and provision for God in that freedom, and it is where that cloud was going in the first place. Grace come to take you to that for which you are apprehended of God. And unknowingly, we're like Paul. Jesus said to him, why is it, Paul, that you kick against the pricks, the ox goads that's trying to guide you? God is saying, this is what I wanted. And we're saying, well, I think this is what I'll do. And God will move back. Why are you fighting against my grace? God's purpose for your being born again is that through that you will yield to God, that life of God, and in that yielding be saved, and that being saved will deliver you to that for which you are apprehended. And we must again go back and understand what that concept is talking about. God comes to us by grace in gifts. Look with me at Romans, the 12th chapter and the 6th verse. Having then gifts differing according to the grace, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us. So what he's saying is, okay, here's what grace is doing. By my grace, I'm going to give you gifts, spiritual gifts. Whether prophesy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of our faith. So, this grace comes as gifts, given to us, distributed to us individually for a greater corporate purpose. Galatians 1:15. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb, and called me by His grace. The first thing His grace does is it comes to you personally. And it says, I'm here to collect what's mine. Until you come to the place that you have the attitude of surrender, nothing is going to happen. Until you continue in the attitude of surrender, the journey will stop. Don't worry about figuring out, oh, what is it that I need to do? It's just because it's right in front of you. The first thing that grace does is it comes to work in you, that it may be able to work through you. Therefore, Galatians 1:15 brings us to Galatians 2:20. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave Himself for me. I do not frustrate the grace of God. For if righteousness came by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. Now, don't get caught up in the wrong interpretation. The first thing that grace does is it lays hold of us. The second thing that grace does is it works through us. Philippians 1:7. Philippians 1:7. Even as it is meet for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch as both in my bonds and in my defense and confirmation of the gospel, you are partakers of my grace. God reaches out to you by grace. We're doing a work in you. That grace can then work through you. And that grace can be extended to everyone that you meet. That's God's light touching others through you. That's what grace, and that is why I am apprehended of God. 1 Corinthians 12:7 said that, well, let me just read it since we're so close. Hopefully holding on to what I'm telling you. 1 Corinthians 12:7. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. Grace comes, lays hold of me. Grace comes to fill me. Grace comes to work through me, to be extended to others. That grace in that gift is a profit to all men. But the only thing that we have to do is know, okay, surrender to that grace. Just surrender to what come to get you. You keep that old man down and you're all right. Surrender. This is the great message of Moses. God has come for a purpose that's greater than yours. It will cost you everything. It has already cost you everything. That cloud has arrived. Go with it. That which you hold back will take you to hell. And I don't care. I don't care what kind of deal you think you have. That which God has put His finger on in your life, if you do not surrender it, it